Alright, hello everyone. My name is Sarah Washington. I am a web design intern for the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology, and I'm here to teach you some HTML and CSS basics to start helping you create your first website. Who we are with CEW&T is to empower women to build confidence and knowledge about technology, expand leadership and teach skills, and to fully leverage technology in support of academic and professional excellence. If you are interested in learning more about us, please make sure to sign up for our mailing list or join the FB page, the Facebook page here that is down below, as well as we do have a website that you can look up on the internet. Materials that you're going to need for today, if you have not done so already, please download Visual Studio Code. This is both available on Windows and Mac. If you prefer to use something else, we also have Atom, which is another code editor for the Mac, or you can search and open Notepad for Windows users. I am going to be on a Mac today, so I'm going to be using Atom. So if you are using some other software, it probably won't completely reflect or look like what I'm doing, but you can still follow along. Just a quick overview of what is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is a document that displays a web page / a website in a browser. It contains basic elements like a header, title, body, and paragraph tag that displays on a website. In order for a website to display on the web, it must be on a server. Otherwise, it is not live. So the website that we're going to be creating today is not going to be actually on the internet. You will be able to open it up in a browser of your choice, but it is not live. So it is only a local file on your computer, which means that only you have access to it and only you can see it. You also don't need to be connected to the internet to be able to open your HTML file because it is a local file on your computer since it is not live. This little picture over here gives us the basic skeleton of what an HTML file, what you should learn and what you should know and kind of memorize is to have an HTML tag, a head tag, a title tag, a closing header tag, a body, and then we can have H1, which are our header sizes. We have paragraph and the closing body in the closing HTML. You want to make sure when you are starting out with your HTML files, when you are opening and closing tags, you need to have both an open closing tag, which is this little piece right here and right here and right here. This is going to be something that you're going to have to put in almost all of your HTML tags when you are coding. There are some that do not use them, such as a break. We will get into that a little bit more. But for the most part, you want to make sure that you are closing your body, your HTML, your paragraphs, and your header tags or any other type of tags that you are using, or else the information that you are displaying into your HTML code onto a website will not be able to show up. Another overview is what is CSS and what does it do? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It is designed to style the layout of the website. It is a file that is linked to in your HTML document. A CSS file is not a web page of its own and will not display any attributes on its own. So you kind of have to think of HTML like it is over in this picture as being a skeleton. This is your skeleton. The CSS is basically the clothes or what goes over the HTML to be able to style it and to design it and to look a certain way. So you can kind of think of HTML being in this way in such a weird kind of reference as being a naked body. In the CSS is you putting the clothes onto the body. It's a weird analogy, but that is a way you can think of it. You can see down here we have what we call selector, property, value, unit, declaration. What these things are is our selector, which will be something like a paragraph tag. This is something that will be close to what we do in CSS. So we have defined margin, font size, and font family, and we close them with brackets. You will be doing this in either a separate HTML file, but I'm also going to get into different CSS styles that we will be using and what will be perfect for you to learn for today and what you can try to experiment later on. But this is just an overview. You can style elements like the body, the headers, the paragraph, images, or custom tags, which I will get into a little bit later what those will be. You must have curly brackets depending on the value in unit, and it may need to end with a semicolon. So here where we have margin, we have 10 pixels, which is our value, in our unit, which is the pixels. You see that we are closing it with a semicolon. This is so that that information that we're giving to our CSS is able to show up, so that if you don't put these in here, if you don't put a semicolon in here, basically what you're editing will not show up on your web page when you're doing your CSS. So you want to make sure you have those semicolons as well as an opening and closing bracket. We're going to go into something that's really important, which is called the CSS Box Model. You have the margin, the empty area around the border, which is right here. You have the border, a border that goes around the padding in the content, which is this gray box right here. You have padding, which is the clears an area around the content, which is this little area, white area around here. And then you have the content, which is the area in the middle. This is where the box, where the text and images will appear. These will have properties that will affect the layout of the web page. Scenario time. So we're going to create a scenario to help us generate some ideas, because as someone who may be new to HTML and web development and web design, you may not know how to necessarily get started on how to use the knowledge that you're going to get. So a good way to do this is starting up a scenario. So say you have a client named Amelia who needs a website for her bakery business. Excuse me. Amelia makes chocolate goods, so she would like something that has a variety of soft blue tones for her website with some elegant text that is easy to read. She needs an about page, a baked goods page, and a contact page. Amelia has provided you with some pictures that you would like to go next to her baked goods and would like a description on the side of each baked good. So this is some type of scenario that we can think of to help us get started. Okay, how can we start creating a website? And if we were ever to go out and make websites for a client, what they might look like. Because clients are going to be very vague. I will tell you that right now. So there will be a lot of changes, but being able to come up with a scenario to help kind of get you an idea of what to do and how to get started is a good way to do that. We have sketch, prototype, and mock-up Amelia's bakery. So one thing that I like to do, and which is a very good thing for people who are going into web development and web design, is to sketch, prototype, and mock-up. So if you see this image over here, what we have is a quick sketch of what Amelia wants before we get started. This will help you as a designer lay out what the site should look like so you can plan your coding and designing process. So here she wants a title at the top. Sorry, let me go back. Amelia's Bakery here at the top. These will be the list of pages that she wants. So she has a home, about page, goodies, and contact. This is also another layout here where we want a welcome statement, information about the site, what each page contains, an ending statement, and then a footer down here, as well as a box over here that will have display a picture, some information about Amelia, who she is, what she likes to do, and what she hopes you get out of the website or her clients get out of the website when they go to look at it. Like I was stating before, we have different CSS styles. There are different types of CSS files. There is inline, internal, and external. excuse me. Inline CSS. An inline CSS is used to apply a unique style to a single HTML element. Internal is an internal CSS file is used to define a style for a single HTML page. An external CSS, which you will get into a little bit later on down your coding road if you choose to continue with this. It is an external style sheet is used to define the style for many HTML pages. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website by changing one file. So it is a separate file that is separate from your HTML page that you link back to your HTML page. So it will be two different files that you will have within a folder on your computer that you will link back to your HTML file, so that if there's something that you want to go back and change and not have to go through your HTML file to just go change that, you have a separate file for that. For this learning activity, for what we're going to do today, we are going to use an internal CSS for this website, which means that we will have an internal CSS file or the elements of CSS within our HTML page. This will make it a little bit long, but I think this will be easier to set you in instead of making you do separate files first, so you can learn just the HTML in the CSS as we go along. Let's learn some things about some CSS properties. We have color. It will take a color value such as blue, yellow, red, etc. and apply it to text. There's also another thing with colors that we can use hex code. We will get into some of those where it is a numeric value that will have basically a different line of colors instead of you having just to put the basic color such as blue. So say if there's a certain shade of blue that you want to use, you would go using a hexacode type of color that will have a certain number of digits that will display for that certain color that you were using. We also have font. This will take a font value of different kinds of fonts. You have background color, which will change the background color in its selector. So the difference between these two is background color will change the effect of the background. Color usually will affect the text of a color that we have. So with our font or our text that we have in there, if we put a color value, it will apply it to the text. We also have font size, the size of the font, and text align, which aligns the text to the left, right, or center. Just some examples of what this might look like. So say if we also have as some websites will have a background image, this will look something sort of like that. So if you have an image that you want to use for your background, instead of using a basic color, you would tell it, okay, this is the folder that I want you to put it in. So when you are linking files such as CSS or images, you have to tell your computer or your HTML code where this file may be located. You can't just put an image when you are linking it into your HTML, because it's trying to find it somewhere on your desktop or whatever folder that it is in. We also have background repeat, no repeat, background size, cover, and border solid yellow. Some of these we'll be using and some of these we won't, but this tells you where an image is located, and what image it is trying to display. Background repeat, make sure that the background image does not keep on repeating, which will be like those overlaying photos of the same image. Background size covers, make sure that the image covers the page. Border solid yellow adds a solid yellow border around the page. You can try this out for yourself in some other HTML files later down the road and see what you get. In addition to what we are going to use, which is called a selector, we will have what we call a class selector. The CSS class selector is specifically a style for a group of elements. The class selector is often used on several elements. So what we will get into when we start our HTML file is that we will have paragraph tags. And what these are just basic tags. But say if there is a certain paragraph tag that you define and you only want to edit that one, you can do that with a class selector. For instance, you can have different paragraph styles in one page using a class so that it only edits that paragraph or edits that style and not affect all your other paragraph tags that you might define later on down the road. Another example with this would also be in your CSS folder or in your CSS file. Using a class, you can use the same style for many HTML elements. The class selector is defined with starting with a or a dot. So it starts with a dot here. So this is when you make your own class. You start with a dot and then you define it here. This tells which class to use. So here we have a header class equals blue, center aligned heading, and then we have it up here in order to access the class in which we have created, we put a dot over here. We will be using a lot of classes in the file that we have right now, so this is a good thing to learn. So for right now, what we're going to do is go ahead and open your HTML editor. I have here one right now open with me. You do want to save it as an HTML file so that it knows that this is an HTML file, and you want to also put it inside of a folder. I have it right here in a folder on my desktop called Amelia's Bakery, and I also have the file right here, the HTML file, as well as I have a subfolder that contains some photos I will be using. So let's go ahead and get started on some of our HTML coding. So what I talked about earlier was us using that basic skeleton, which was basically our basic HTML tags, such as the HTML tag, the header, the title, and the body. We're going to go ahead and start coding that basic part out. So what you want to do here is do an open HTML right here. We are going to do head. We're going to put both of these right here. You want to do an opening and closing header. You want to put a title between your header right here. And what this title will do will basically show the title of your HTML page in your tab. It doesn't show up on the actual browser in the actual website in your content area. It will show up in your tab. So if you want to name your tab a specific name so that when it shows up, it's not just showing up a basic HTML file, you can name it right here. I'm going to name mine's Amelia's Bakery, and I'm going to close that. We also have the body. Do an open and close tag for that. And then finally, we will go ahead and close our HTML element right there. So I'm going to save it. If you were on a Mac, you can do Command S to go ahead and save your file and do it that way. And if you were on Windows, I believe you can do Control S as well. So I'm going to open this with whatever browser of choice. Will tell me it wants to access my folder. And here we are. So we have our directory here, and you can see that this is where it's accessing on my computer. Since it is a local file, it's not on the actual internet, so it's just accessing this file from my desktop. As you can see, what I meant here with our title area being here, it shows up right here. It does not show up in the background of the HTML page that you have. If I wanted to show something up in the body per se, let's say I want to do a paragraph tag. I'm going to just do one as a quick example. Hello, my name is Amelia. Save it, and then I'll refresh it. As you can see here, our paragraph tag now shows up with hello, my name is Amelia, because this is what I defined it in my body area. It needs to be within your body area. It cannot be outside of the body, because if it is, what happens is it won't show up. Your body is where all the contents go. That's where everything will go, such as your images and everything, in order for it to show up here. So that is just the basic part of it. So now let's go back to our scenario here. Amelia wants to have a bunch of text on her website, and she wants to have a title. So how will we start that out? So what I'm going to do is define a H1 header. You have headers by the name of H1 all through H6. H1 will be the biggest header that you have. H6 will be the smallest header that you have. Right now we are going to use an H1. Now if you remember where I talked about classes, I want to specifically have Amelia's title at the top to be just on its own, so that if I want to go back and edit her title in a different way and not have it be affected with everything else that I'm coding, I'm going to define a class. So I'm going to define a class here. I'm going to do equal, use some colons, some quotes here, and I'm going to name it title. And what we're going to do here is put Amelia's Bakery. Amelia's Bakery. And let's save that, and then we will refresh. And here we go. We have Amelia's Bakery right here. Since I have a class here, when I go back to go style my CSS elements, I will change this specific title color to be white in a specific size. But for right now, you can see it shows up right here. She also wanted to have some separate links to display on the website. So what we're going to do next is to have a nav tag, which will be this. And what a nav tag is it's basically going to have a bunch of navigations where we're going to put either links in there either in the form of unordered list or list elements, which will basically be HTML tags or HTML elements for you to list things. They don't have to specifically be links to different pages. They can just be for things that we want to list out. So I'm going to do that again, but I'm also going to name it a class. And I want to name it menu. And then close that right there. And when you are defining a list, you have ordered list and unordered list. An unordered list will basically list out all of the elements or things that you define within your list in an unordered way. So it will just be like little dots there. If you wanted to do it in an ordered list, which would be OL, right now I'm using UL for unordered list, but if I wanted to do an ordered list, what would happen there is that it would list it in numerical order. Right now I don't want to do that, so I want to do an unordered list here. I'm going to do my open tag. I'm going to do LI, which will stand for list. And how we define links, because we want this to be a link to be able to go to different websites or different elements on the pages that we will define, I want to do an anchor tag, which is href. And what this is, will basically be able to link to different pages within the website or to different pages that are on the web. And what I want to do is name it, since we are not creating different pages that will be linkable that we will access, I'm going to do a hashtag symbol right here. And the reason I'm doing that is so that you can see that there will be links, but they won't go anywhere. This is basically to just outline these until we create the rest of our pages for the website. Since we won't be doing that here in this tutorial, I'm just going to link it to itself. I want to close the anchor tag as well as close the list tag. And we're going to do that about 4 different times. So I'm actually going to copy this. You want to be really careful with copying and pasting, just because you might miss something that you might need to change. For right now, since we are only doing about 4, it should be fine. I'm going to do an about. I'm going to do one that says goodies. And I'm going to do the last one, which is her contact page. And what I said is very important here is that you also close your unordered list. So we will close it, save it. Let's load it and see what happens here. So what you can see here is that it is in an unordered list. Here we are, we have home, we have about, we have goodies, and we have contact. You can see that these are basically highlighted, but if I click on them, they won't go anywhere. That's because I have this hashtag here so that it does not go anywhere. I'm just defining the pages now, since I don't have an about page, I don't have a goodies page, and I don't have a contacts page. That is something that we won't get into right now. This is just to basically show you how we can define those different links to different pages on a website. All right. Now, I want to also go back and create a welcome box, because if we look back in our presentation here where we had this little outline here, this mock-up of what Amelia wanted, she wants to have a border around here that kind of has these 2 different shades of blue. So I want to create basically a section of that so that it's separate on its own on the HTML page. So I'm going to define what we like to call a div. And a div is basically like a divider or a section divider. There are different ways to do it for right now, but we're going to use just a div. So I'm going to open a div tag, and I'm going to make a class, and I'm going to call it welcome box. Welcome box. And so now that I'm doing that, what do I want to put in this divider? I want to put a paragraph tag in here, but I'm also going to put it in a specific class of its own. So I'm going to name this paragraph tag class equals color change, because I want to go back and change the color of these. So I have that, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to put here, welcome to, if I could spell, welcome to Amelia's Bakery. I'm going to open this all the way back up. Where you'll find all kinds of baked goods that your heart As you can see, it's kind of going to get a little bit long. So there is ways to divide up your paragraph tags. You can space them out. Right now, I don't want to space it out. I want to keep it all on one line here. So I want to put that there. I'm going to save it. Again, always save. And I want to see if this shows up. So here we are. Welcome to Amelia's Bakery, where you'll find all kinds of baked goods that your little heart desires. This is the end of part 1. In the next video, I'm going to show you more of the HTML elements that we're going to be using and how to design this out a little bit more. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.